Hello, Year 9, and welcome to today's lesson. Whilst you got the lesson open, you have the worksheet open, the assignments area to record your answers on. If your device doesn't let you write on the worksheet, make sure that you are writing on the notes document in the assignments area. Or if you're working on paper, make sure that you take a picture of your work and you submit that picture in the assignment area. So you've got different people working in different ways. All are good, just make sure your work is there so that I can see it. So today's title is The Failure of Weimar, so that is the Weimar Republic. Our starter is quick recall, so who ruled Germany for World War One? What two treaties did Germany sign with the USA to have the German economy? Where did Hitler's failed putsch originate? When did Stresemann agree to Germany's entry into the League of Nations, and why did Hitler appeal to much of the German population? So pause this video, have a look at these questions, and come back ready for some feedback. So here are our answers up on the screen. I'll quickly go through some. So we had the Kaiser before the war. Stresemann signed the Dawes and the Young Plan. Hitler's putsch was in Munich. Germany joined the League of Nations in 1926, and Hitler appealed to the sections of the population because he promised to improve their lives. He was a good public speaker, and he was very passionate about improving Germany. So make sure you green pen your work. So our intent today, looking at our learning journey, we're looking at the failure of the Weimar democracy, which is building on our prior learning right the way back to year 8 about the First World War, and then early unit looking at the impact of the First World War. Why did Germany become a democracy? And then we're going to carry that link through into looking at some of the problems that the Weimar Republic and then its period of stability from 1923 to 29. Today is the failure of that democracy in 1929, and that will do our future learning about how the Nazi parties were able to rise to power. This will also link into your learning year 11 when you do your interwar unit, because today we'll be looking at the 1929 Greek crash, and that is a big factor in the interwar unit as well. So the better that you understand this lesson, the easier it'll be for you in year 11. The failure of the Weimar democracy. Our objective to investigate the impact of the Depression on the Weimar government. Our outcomes, all of us should be able to describe the percent of the vote won by different parties between 1924 and 28. Most of us should be able to explain the issues of political stability of the Weimar government. Some of us should be aiming to evaluate Hitler's road to power, and should also be looking to analyse and evaluate in what ways did President Hindenburg try to resist or limit Nazi power. Okay, so our first activity today is a bit of numeracy. So we're looking at this table which you can see on your worksheet. We will be answering these questions. What does this graph show happens to the popularity of the KPD, the Communist Party, between 1924 and 1923? You'll see on your graph the KPD is second bottom, so I'll circle it, and it's this bar here. So the second to last bar I've marked on red underneath, where you'll see that all the way along. What is happening to the popularity of that party during this time period? If you look at the numbers, you'll be able to see. Next, what does the graph show happens to the popularity of the SPD? So the SPD are the purple bar next to them. So if you go one across from KPD left to the SPD. And what does this graph shows to the popularity of the NSDAP? What becomes the Nazi party? So that is the dark blue bar at the end. Hopefully you're able to see how that bar changes. So write down answers and then come back for some feedback. So you've got space on your worksheet to answer if you just type where after where it is on. So we can see that the support for the Communist Party remains very stable throughout the time period. It increases at points and it also goes down at points. The support for the Nazi Party remains fairly low in the end of the 1920s, at which point it rises very rapidly when we're in the early 1930s. We know that in 1929, that is when the Great Depression happened, the Wall Street crashed, and global trade dropped to 2/3 its previous level. All parties rarely won a majority in the Weimar, one big party in charge. It was normally lots of little parties working together, and we call that a coalition. There were powers in the German constitution, which we've looked at, which said that the president could use Article 48 to give his chancellor emergency was. So if Germany went into a problem like hyperinflation, the would give power to the chancellor to let him rule. So they didn't have a majority in terms of numbers of seats, but not in Germany could support them. So the Nazis were popular, but they weren't big enough to rule on their own. So even by 1953, they'd only won 43.9% of votes. So they're the biggest party, but they don't have the majority of the people supporting them. And our keywords are listed at the bottom. So majority is having more than half, coalition is two or more working together, and Article 48 is that power that gives the president the ability to rule without needing the support of the Reichstag. So now I want you to watch this video clip here. So copy the link off worksheet or from the assignments area. If you click Control and click that link, take you to the video from your worksheet as well. And then you just need to watch the video, make some notes, and about ready to feedback. So pause me. Okay, so we'll now combine the knowledge that you've gained from that video with some information that we're going to collect in this next task, and at the end we'll bring it all back together and we'll do one big summary. So our tasks are to create a flowchart showing Hitler's road to power. You've got the template for this on your worksheet. I'll also go through an example now and show you how to do that. And then gold and platinum is to have a go at answering these questions using the information, and I'll talk through an example of those in a second if you stay listening. So here is what your sample flowchart will look like, and we're going to look at one of the information sheets and I'll show you how you would fill that in. So our questions are, for the first box, what forms there was no majority? How many seats did the Nazis gain to make them the second largest party? Who became Chancellor, and why was he unpopular? So now we'll go to our information sheet to find that information. So no party won a majority, so a coalition was formed. We've got our first. The Nazis gained 107 seats. That was second answer. Heinrich Brüning was made the Chancellor, and he was unpopular for cutting unemployment pay and rising taxes. So that is what we do for our answers. And to complete your flowchart, go through all the next few information, just answer all of those questions and you'll have a complete flowchart. For gold and platinum, you've got a page on your worksheet with each of the questions laid out. You just need to type your answers into those on the space in the tables. So these are the other information sheets that you'll be using for the flowchart. So these are your chance to improve your work. So this is your green property. If you haven't finished it yet, make sure you pause, have a go, and then come back. So Hitler built success. So I'll just summarize each of these boxes. Basically, Hitler ran to President Germany. He got 13.4 million votes. He didn't win, but he came second. Hindenburg re-won his election and got 19.3 million votes. But it's very impressive that Hitler was able to get 13.4 million votes and was able to compete against Hindenburg, who was a German war hero. He was the general during the First World War, and he had been the president since the end of the war. In 1932, there's elections to the Reichstag. Brüning resigned, and he was replaced by new politician Hans von Papen. Von Papen at Laporte called a new election almost straight away, and that is the time where Nazis became the largest party, so they ended up winning 230 seats. The SPD, which used to be the most popular party, had dropped down to 133 seats. The Centre Party had 97, and Communists only had 87. So the Nazis have become the biggest party in the Reichstag by almost 100 seats. What happened after those elections? There was a new chancellor again. Hitler was demanding to become the chancellor. Hindenburg said, oh, he thought Nazis were too radical and too disruptive. They'd cause too many problems for Germany. In 1932, there was another election. The Nazis got less votes than they did in the earlier election that year, but they were still the biggest party in the country. Von Papen decided to resign because his party became less popular. At that point, the President Hindenburg goes to an old friend called Kurt von Schleicher, and he made him Chancellor. Schleicher almost immediately resigned because he realised he didn't have any support, so he would basically be powerless. And due to that, Hindenburg appoints Hitler Chancellor on the 30th of January 1933. The plan was that von Papen and Hindenburg worked together to limit Hitler's power. So in the cabinet, which is the group of politicians that lead the country and make decisions, Hitler was only allowed 2 other Nazis, and he would have to have von Papen as his vice-chancellor. So Hindenburg were looking to use Hitler's popularity to be able to do what they wanted to do, and they tried to keep Hitler as weak as possible. So our checkpoints are a bit of a summary for where we're up to with all the information we gained in that task video. So after the Depression, Germany was very unstable, both politically and economically. The government kept changing very quickly, like we've seen, and there was wide-scale unemployment, so Germany was not in a good place. The Weimar government kept failing and we kept getting new chancellors. Hindenburg had to use the powers of Article 48 several times to be able to keep changing the chancellor. The support for Nazis was growing before the Depression, but massively shot up due to the Depression. So from 1930 to 1932 is where we the biggest amount of growth. And the important bit to remember is in 1933, on the 5th of January, Hitler was made Chancellor due to the fact that Hindenburg and von Papen thought they could control Hitler and the Nazi Party. So at the end of today's lesson, you've had quite a lot of information today. So to assist your learning, can you give me an answer for what have we learned about today? Why have we been learning it? So think back to when we talked about intent in our curriculum journey. And how does this fit into what we've learned about Germany since 1890? So where is this on our learning journey? So answer this on your worksheet, work document, making it clear which part lesson you're answering, or on paper. Make sure you submit that in the assignment area. Any questions, just send them through to me on Teams chat or through email, and I'll get back to you and I'll try and help you with anything that you might be stuck with.